Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 755B, and today's date is September 1st, 2015, and the title of this episode is Homeland Security is Drawing Up Plans to Deal with a Cyber Pearl Harbor. Let's get right into the economic collapse geopolitical news. Now, out in Ukraine, the situation out there is getting worse. We saw riots and the protesters out there, and right now the economy is in complete freefall. The GDP projections are basically going to contract by 15% this year. The currency is being artificially propped up by capital controls. The output collapsing and inflation is at 60%. Living standards have plunged. But the government refuses to negotiate with leaders of the Donbass and still maintains their army on the front lines, ready to do battle. They're not abiding by the Minsk II agreement. And we see the right sector, which is controlled by the U.S. government central bankers, starting to push riots, protests, war, because Poroshenko is not doing what the central bankers want, and that is to get into war. And we're seeing that the people there are saying, you know something, we don't want Poroshenko in government. The country is in shambles. Everything is a complete disaster. And basically, the United States caused all of this. When they had the coup d'etat, removed the elected leader, all we see is the economy fall apart. The central bankers come in, steal the natural resources like their gold and other things. And the people end up suffering. We see humanitarian crisis because there's war going on in the southeastern area. And we see the same thing all throughout the Middle East. Every place the United States government central bankers go into, we see the same exact scenario. And we know what they're doing. They're provoking Russia. They want Russia to do something. I mean, this is why Yatsenyuk is out there saying, listen, Russia better accept our debt reduction. And they'll accept whatever we give them. And they want Russia to do something. They're pulling out anything and everything to get Russia to do something. Putin understands this. He understands the central bankers want more. He understands they're pushing him. And we can see that NATO and the United States, they are continually moving military assets all around this area. And we see that the Pentagon has deployed 2 MQ-1 Predator long-range unmanned surveillance drones and 70 airmen to Latvia. Of course, it's on a training mission. And every time they say it's a training mission or it's a drill, they always seem to leave the troops and the equipment in that area. It happens every single time. And we know that the United States government central bankers will not stop until they get a war started. And the United States is not ready for a war whatsoever. First of all, the armed forces are basically thinned out around the globe in Africa, Middle East, Eastern Europe. The equipment, most of it is obsolete. Some of it that's brand new doesn't even work. I mean, we're getting information that the radar systems that are based in Greenland are from the 1950s. Ashton Carter is saying that they need to modernize this equipment because when we go to war, they can't detect any missiles coming in that direction. So if Russia, while we're at war, fires a ballistic missile, there's no detection whatsoever. This is not a war with Yemen, Iraq, Libya. This is war with an advanced actor that has nuclear weapons. This is not going to end well. And we can see they're pushing very hard for war. You will see the push come harder when this entire system collapses. We see the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer will take part in the Sea Breeze 2015 International Naval Drill in Ukraine. The USS Donald Cook is armed with 2 Aegis ballistic missile defense system launchers with up to 56 nuclear-capable Tomahawk cruise missiles. It also carries a crew of about 337. And this drill is going to run through September 12th. And they're having this drill with NATO, of course, to provoke Russia. This is what's happening right now. It's all about provoking China. And we're already at war with China. In Africa, and now we've seen the explosion, another one in China. I won't be surprised if we see another explosion someplace else to retaliate from the explosion in China. Because in the Tianjin area, that explosion was in a port city, getting word that it was next to a supercomputer that handled the economy, marketing, and things like that. And we understand if they destroy the economy there, they can blame it all on China. And then we had an explosion in Japan. So I'm expecting something else to occur. And we'll have to wait and see if this does happen. But we're already at war, because wherever Russia and China is, the U.S. is there fighting them on the other side. Now we understand there is war all throughout the Middle East right now. And it's getting worse as time goes on, because the people in these countries are rising up. They don't want the puppet government in there, and they don't want the central bank in their country. So in Yemen, Libya, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, all of this is happening. We have a couple of African nations that this is also happening in. Nigeria, Sudan, and others. And what we're seeing is a lot of people from all these war-torn countries that can't take the fighting anymore. They're leaving their countries. And they're moving throughout Europe. And we're starting to see chaos on the borders with a lot of refugees who are fleeing these areas. This is what you see when we're in a world war, where people are trying to move away from the war, and there's no place to go. And we are already seeing this. I mean, waves of migrants are hitting the EU borders from Greece, Italy, and Hungary, fleeing tensions in Afghanistan, Iran, and Syria. And it's just going to get worse. We see Greece stopped a ship that was loaded with weapons, and it came from Turkey, and it was heading towards Libya. So I wonder where all these weapons and explosives, who they were for. Most likely the Islamic State, the small group that was there, and most likely the government, the puppet government of Libya, to fight and try to get back the country. We see that Russia has brought in their Russian jets into Syria. And right now, Russia is saying, yeah, these reports are completely false. We are not flying our jets around and bombing the Islamic State. We're setting up a base. We brought some of our military assets, but we are not attacking the Islamic State as of yet. But this doesn't mean they're not going to. I think Putin has just moved his chess piece and said check or checkmate to the coalition forces and says, okay, your move, what are you going to do? Because he understands the Islamic State is the proxy army for the United States government central bankers. I mean, he realizes what's going on. And he's preparing right now to back Assad. This is why all this hardware is coming in. Now the Dutch, they're saying that they might have to bring in ground troops into Syria to find out why this refugee problem is getting out of hand. Well, no, they're going in there to set up the safe zone. They're going in there to battle Assad. We see the call for Australia, for the Dutch to come in and help out, plus everyone else, because they're getting ready to go after Assad. The goal is still the same. The plan is still the same. They might try different tactics, but they will not let up. They do believe in their heads that if they get into Syria, this system will be propped up and everything will be fine. They'll be able to put the dollar on their natural resources, set up a central bank, build the oil pipeline, And if Iran doesn't cooperate, they'll just go into Iran and keep the dollar on their oil. This is their thinking right now. And eventually what they'll do is they'll go back into those other countries where the people are throwing out the puppet governments. And we understand that eventually what's going to happen is this whole system is going to break down. They will not be able to keep this continually ongoing. We see it's crumbling apart right now. And they will resort to a false flag. I mean, there's no other way to look at this point. And we're getting reports now that Homeland Security, they are drafting right now plans for a cyber Pearl Harbor. We've heard warnings about this going back a ways of a cyber Pearl Harbor, where someone will hack they will hack into the power grid, and it will bring down the power for a couple of weeks. And as I started reporting this, the threat increases each year, and they continually use cyber attacks on different companies to show that look how vulnerable we are. At any moment, we can have an attack. Last year, the NSA Director Michael Rogers told the House Intelligence Committee that cybersecurity was a big concern, and they're worried about rogue nations or some type of group shutting down the electric, hitting the infrastructure. Now, it could be the power, it can be the power and water, it can be the power and gas water. It doesn't matter. Because those people, their focus is on the electrical grid. Because they're saying everything is driven by electric, and that's where the hackers are going to go. So the Department of Homeland Security identified 16 critical infrastructures that support the U.S. economy. They know what they are. They knew this a while back. And what they're doing right now is they're making plans. Now, we know what's going on. We understand they just have to hit a couple of these and the electric comes down. I believe back in 2003, when the Eastern Seaboard, when the power came down, this was a test to see if they had the ability to do this. And guess what? They do. Now, are they going to black out the entire country? Absolutely not. That'd be ridiculous. How would the president get the message across that we're being attacked? They will black out certain parts. Do we know what those parts are? No, we don't. It could be the Eastern Seaboard. It could be maybe parts of the Eastern Seaboard, parts of the West, and a little bit in the Middle West. But what they'll do is they'll do it a little bit. Those other areas will be hit with a physical attack. Remember, they want the people of this nation to feel the attack all at once. So it will be intermixed with physical and cyber. And eventually they will hit the financial arena. All the financial companies. And this is where we'll get our bank holidays. This is where we'll get our capital controls. And this is where we'll have the Fed step in. And we've been hearing rumors now of quantitative easing 4. Now, if the Fed comes out and just does it, no one is going to buy that this is going to basically recover the economy. But if another nation or group brings down the economy, they can say we were in a recovery, they brought us into a collapse situation, and now we're going to pump it up once again. People will believe that because it was done before, back in 2008 to the present. And this is why we're starting to hear these rumblings about QE4 and how they're going to need to do this. Because we know this is not a people's economy. We know this is a central bank economy. And we know as time goes on and the economy collapses, what does the central bank need to do in every situation? They create more and more currency. And they can't stop. And they'll have to do it once again. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.